You were over there, it's 24/7 over. Well, she's, yeah.
Okay, Lena's here. 6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. And, we'll go to number 2, adjustments to the agenda under old business, and item B, Valley Unified Education Service Center. We move on to period of public participation. Is there anyone from the public wishing to address the board this evening? Kevin, speech? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, items of business. Under old business, we have the Manfred School Association guidance update on fall sports.
So in your packet, I gave you 4 different documents. One was the revised return to competition activities. That was what was pushed out by the MPA on the 28th as their final working document. After that, the Department of Human Services and the Department of Education provided a response to that guidance, and that's the document that looks like a letter here with the main emblem at the top. It was evident from the response from the DHHS and DOE that they weren't 100% comfortable with the guidance provided by the MPA, and that there were certain things that that were left to be what they hope to be discussed, because there are some conflicting guidances, and then they're making kind of cross comparisons to physical education requirements, and then the just the general pre-K to 12 requirements, and then these guidance for sports and how they're not in alignment. So you have that as well. The next day, a joint statement went out from the MPA, Maine School Board Administration, Maine Superintendent's Administration, and the DOE put out a joint statement that everyone's looking forward to working together to find a resolution to this. And then finally, on that same day, I shared with you an email that went out to the athletic directors from Mike Bisson, who's the executive director of the MIAAA, Maine. Thank you. And how they're working diligently to come up with a plan for a revision to this information. And I know we met last week, and we hope that today we would have further guidance to consider. And I know it was the request of this board to also try to work with a joint meeting with SAD 27 and Madawaska. SAD 27 and Madawaska have regular meetings this week. And then in light of our adjustment to the agenda today, I think maybe it's best that we just have our own meeting and make determinations for ourselves. So I can tell you this, there are, I don't want to say rumors, but it's with good information that we believe there will be a revision pushed out tomorrow of these guidance from the MPA. We do feel that it's going to probably fit more in alignment with the community sports guidelines, which I have on the display. This is the community sports guidance that clubs are supposed to follow, or private entities, which is why you had, Dutch soccer happening this summer, and you had some other different programs happening throughout the state. And I'll just bring your attention to this chart on that guidance, which categorizes sports in 3 different categories. And for the purpose of our discussion, we're primarily talking about soccer here, and soccer falls into the moderate risk category. And with moderate risk, you're supposed to follow guidance levels 1, 2, or 3 for indoor and outdoor sports, and then you can extend to 4 for outdoor only. And those guidances are here with respect to what kind of play you can do for that. So we're looking at the first 4 levels. Level 1 being the skill building conditioning, which is what our kids are currently doing with the MPA phase 1, 2, 3. I think we're up to 4 now. Essentially, they're getting in shape. Level 2 is team-based practice with physically distant group activities. Again, we're doing a lot of this with our drills. The coaches have been advised to keep kids in cohorts of 10 or less, or pods, if you will, of 10 or less. That's been happening. Then moving to level 3, which has not happened yet, move within team competition. So intra-squad scrimmages. Now your team can play each other as a safety measure, so that you can start building that foundation for play. And we're thinking that the MPA is going to call this preseason as level 3. This level 3 will be the preseason where the MPA will say, move forward with practice the way that practice is supposed to be, and then extend to level 4, which is competition between teams of the same geographic area, such as the same county. And this level of play involves 2 cohorts of participants. So the Aroostook County ADs met, and I know they discussed this in length, and in their discussions, they talked about Aroostook County playing Aroostook County, and essentially there being 2 different classifications, a large school classification and a small school classification. Because everyone's small in Aroostook County, it's kind of hard to make that distinction, but essentially every school the size of Madawaska and larger would be the large schools in this idea, and everything smaller than Madawaska would be a small school. So Wisdom would fall in the small schools competition, and you'd be in the same category as Van Buren, Washburn, so schools of that size. So and I'll call on Mr. Pelletier here in a minute to elaborate on that. But from that AD meeting, the superintendents met after that. And we were quite clear that our boards are going to want a guarantee that what's happening in St. Agatha is very similar to what's happening in Van Buren, and very similar to what's happening in Fort Kent, and so on and so forth. And I advocated that I can control that to a level within Valley Unified Schools, but I can't control what the Washburn AD is going to do, or the Caribou AD. So we came up with a couple of Aroostook County norms or non-negotiables that I wanted to share with you. And one of those non-negotiables was obviously the 100-person limit that can attend an outdoor gathering. That, without a doubt, cannot be strayed from. So the home teams are going to have to really work on how you determine that 100-person count. And to take that a step further, we felt that in order to make it easy straight across the board, because you have some schools that are only gonna have 10 players and some schools that have a roster of 25, and that's going to, that's going to limit the, how many participants you can have, because the 100 limit counts the home team, the away team, the referees, the ball runners, everybody that runs the game. So the AD is counted in there, the superintendent of the game, he's counted in there. And then the rest can be the fans. So we all agreed as superintendents that tickets will only be given for the parents of the home team only at home games. So the only people who will be fans at home games, besides the workers and the players, will be the parents of the home team only. So if Wisdom is playing in Van Buren, our parents will not be going to Van Buren to watch that game. We further discussed that we need to have live streaming available for all games, so that if people obviously are going to want to watch these games, they will have the availability of live streaming. So we're looking into a couple of different solutions locally for that, to make that happen. In addition to that, we talked about what happens when we have large games where the Wisdom boys and girls are playing the Madawaska boys and girls, and it makes for a big event. So in this arrangement, if the boys are playing here, the girls will be playing away, so that you're thinning out your crowd that way by making sure that the teams are not traveling together, so we can limit how many kids are on the bus. And then we're further thinning out the potential for people storming, the field because they really want to watch these games. So that was another thing we discussed. And then beyond that, we left the door open to work within the guidelines that are given to us, we hope, tomorrow, so that we're clear on our expectations as a county. I made myself very clear, and that was based on the discussion we had as a board last week, that we want to make sure that when we send our kids to Limestone, we are going to see a very similar picture than when Limestone comes here. And across the board, we're all in favor of that. And I know some superintendents have already had board meetings where they've discussed this, and it's been a welcome relief for some, and for some where they want to fill that 100 capacity, for some of them, it was a little more difficult to swallow the fact that they might only have 50 fans there because they're a smaller community. But in the end, we all felt that the parents, it's a clear delineation. Parents of the home players are the ones that need. Mr. Pelletier, do you want to elaborate on any of that?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much you're accurate. The Aroostook Creek AD meeting that we zoomed in last week was talking about reclassification. Pretty much we were kind of told we're going to have to scrap whatever schedules we've made. And you're pretty accurate that like all the small schools will be, playing within a division, and the larger schools will be playing within a division. And just looking to schedule games close to our schools. So, I can't wait till tomorrow, as you had stated, the MBA is going to give more guidance and answering hopefully some of the questions that the HHS and DOE have brought up. I think having the home fans at games, I think is a great idea. So I think, again, I think we've made positive strides to, again, try to limit the amount of traffic, limit how many people are going to be at the games. And again, tomorrow morning, hopefully, with the information the NBA will give, will help us and guide us.
One thing that was important to us as well is that the teams that traditionally play downstate in the Penobscot League, so I'm talking about Presque Isle, Caribou, and Holton, that they were on board with this agreement as well, because if they're going to send their kids down to, down to the Bangor area, and then they're going to send them up here to the valley the next day, that wasn't going to fly with us. So Caribou, Presque Isle, Holton, they're all on board. It's a county league only. And that's exactly how we are in full agreement with that.
That maximum crowd size, limiting the spectators to the parents of home team players. I mean, that was I had some isolated talks with members of the Health, Safety and Wellness Committee who were really wondering how we're gonna handle, fans, and talked about people sitting in cars around fields, and that's just gonna become a nightmare for somebody to manage. So it's just best that we hold hard and fast on parents of home team players, because when you add up your players, your officials, your coaches, your ball runners, everything else, I mean, we'll be lucky if all the parents of all the players, of all the home team
I think
players.
the only team that was worried about that was Presque Isle, because they have cheerleaders as well. And
Yeah.
so they're gonna work in a plan where perhaps just the upperclassmen's parents get to attend the home games, or one parent, per player. For us, I envision us giving each player a lanyard with a ticket, a visible ticket, and those parents are given that, and they have to wear it during the game, as well as the masking, so that it's visible, and if you don't have your ticket, we're asking you to leave.
And masking and physical distancing
Yeah.
and everything else. That's-
The other thing that I thought I'd bring up, I know, next week we have another Aroostook League meeting, is the entry point for, fans and the crowd to come in. I know at Wisdom, I think logistically, we're gonna be able to have just one entry, so it'll be easier to manage. I know, not so much like, say, Fort Fairfield, where Tim Watt brought up, it's kind of hard because there's a lot of entry points, and, it's gonna be harder to manage, but
Yeah.
I do believe, like, at Wisdom, we'll be able to have one entry point
Yeah.
and be able to manage.
Well, and for example, Fort Kent has multiple entry points, and we talked about, fencing that off and making a one entry point. Madawaska has the gated field, so that's gonna be easy for them, but I think you guys do as well. It will be a problem that we can easily solve.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be the onus on every school to make sure that's happening, so Fort Fairfield's gonna have to figure it out as well. We also talked about, we can make a game day decision on whether or not we send our kids, so if we get word that something happened in Fort Fairfield on this day, and it's related to COVID-19, our team's not going to Fort Fairfield today. We're just making that decision on the fly, and everyone was okay with that as well. We have to make the decisions what's best for our kids. So I guess what I'm asking you is, given all this, I think that I'm comfortable recommending this plan pending on, what the MPA has tomorrow. And if the MPA comes out with totally different guidance that is contrary, and I don't believe they will after, the joint statement with everyone, I think they're going to make the right decision. They're gonna come up with something very similar to what you see here. I'm very comfortable with our kids participating. It would be a 10-game season only, so a very short season. We would not be playing in a state tournament, so there would be the small school champion for Aroostook and the large school champion for Aroostook, or however the ADs, if they decide to, make one super champion of them all, I don't know, but it would be Aroostook County only.
It'd be middle school soccer on steroids.
Yeah, and middle school, we would also like to follow the same suit for middle school sports as well, small school, large school, and Aroostook County only, so they could have at least at some kind of a season for the middle school as well.
I do have a question for home games. So where you say parents only, if you have dad who's working, mom is going, but 7-year-old Lucy can't go, stay home, does she get to go with mom? And
We talked about all of the external factors, right? But I think for the purpose of cohorting and the purpose of keeping your crowds to a specific cohort, we're gonna hold to the parents only. I mean, because we can stray on every avenue, and I would even take it as far to say, biological parents only, or, I mean, I hate saying that because you might have adopted parents, so maybe it's guardians only, but we have to keep it somewhat.
As much as we'd like to be flexible, I think, once we start making exceptions, then that barn door swings wide open, and it's gonna become a logistical nightmare for ADs and building principals and other supervisory staff have to make decisions right on the spot. So if we're cut and dry, we get the word out well in advance through their players, through their parents and families, and the schools make the announcements, to the student body, I think we're gonna be good.
I think people are just be thrilled that they're gonna have some kind of school for kids.
I agree.
approve, this plan if you're comfortable with this plan. Like I said, if tomorrow the ball drops and we're like, whoa, what just happened? We'll get you back here and we'll make another decision, but I feel pretty confident that this is gonna be the direction that they go.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion that we accept the plan that has just been presented to us.
I move that we accept the plan.
Okay, Your Honor,
Second?
second by Wayne. Any more questions? If not, we'll take a vote in favor of accepting the plan for the fall sports. All in favor? Okay, next to the Valley Unified Exhibition Service Center. We've got a letter in front of us that was just presented to us. And I'll let Ben elaborate on that.
I was requested to a meeting on Sunday with Chairman of the SAD33 board, Gary Sibley, and we knew that the board was working with their attorneys on something. I think we had announced that to you guys a little while ago. This is the result of that work. The chairman asked that I, of course, share with you, share with the Madawaska School Committee. I also sent a copy of the letter to the commissioner. This morning, I got a response back from the commissioner a little earlier. And her reply was, "Dear Ben, we recognize how much work you and the other SAUs have put into this effort, and we are very sorry to hear that the governance structure cannot be developed for the Valley Unified School construction project." And then I wrote back immediately to her, "Dear Commissioner Macon, although this letter is troubling, I do believe it is not the end. We will still be working diligently over the next few weeks to try to work with a plan that will satisfy all parties, and I'll be in touch soon." So one thing that I tried to gauge from my conversation with Mr. Sibley was, is this a definite here, you know? And I think he said, he felt that the board really wants some movement coming to the table with regards to some of those things that they feel are still an issue. And I said, what's the priority? And the priority, he believes, is the governance structure right now for the Valley Unified Board. Whereas we created the Valley Unified Board with a clear 333 membership. Now with the financial implications of a regional school and all of those things with bond indebtedness and all of those things, they really feel that the only time that a RSU board will come into play is after that school is built. And they find that that's troubling because there's a lot of business to handle before the school is built. So I think they would, sooner than later, like to discuss that governance of the Valley Unified Board.
And the governance issue is that there's a bigger school system and they want the votes to be.
Yeah, I think they don't feel, and you can see in that second paragraph there, that they feel that whereas they have a majority of the student population, a majority of the valuation, but only a third of the vote, they're not representing their communities well in this combination. And then they cite that there's been a pattern of 6-3 votes recently. I can think of one meeting where there was a 6-3 vote. I don't know if it's patternistic, but it's definitely a concern for them that the Madawaska and your reps seem to be voting in unison, comparatively speaking. So I don't know.
So what would happen is they would get their wish and they would have 55% of the votes. What kind of a problem does that present to Madawaska School Department in MSAD33?
I think ultimately, when you explore the RSU process, you're going to find out that essentially your membership will have to be representative of your communities. And we see that here with this board. Your St. Agatha reps, correct, have a little more weighted factor than the Frenchville reps. That's a close comparison, so it's hard to see because essentially it really doesn't factor into anything. But I think the RSU will definitely have to have that weighted membership. Now, I say that, but it's not based on SAD 27, 33, and Madawaska anymore. When an RSU is formed, it's not between 3 school districts. It's between Frenchville, St. Agatha, Fort Kent, Wallagrass, St. Francis, St. Agatha, Madawaska. It's all the towns, and those towns need representation. So it's all very different. What's hard with Valley Unified is we're an appointed board from each SAU board. So Giselle and I tossed a few, ideas together today, and maybe we can look at something or propose something to the 3 districts to see if that will satisfy SAD 27. But I also have to advocate for you all that I think you guys need to discuss what's non-negotiable for you, because a partnership is 2 ways. And I do believe that SAD 27 is asking something of its 2 partners, and we should listen before it all goes away. But I also believe that you have the right to ask for things as well, or trade things in this process. Can't tell you what that is because I can only be here to support what you guys feel is important for your communities.
Now, in forming an RSU, well, when this whole thing started, it was just the high school, and then we brought in the middle school. Now, does this mean that all schools would be involved in the RSU, or can it still be each community?
You would have the flexibility. We've been told that you would have the flexibility in an adjustment to the current law to limit that to specific grade levels. So if you guys said we want to form an RSU for grades 7 through 12, you could do that. And that way pre-K to 6 would still be SAD 33. So we've been given that guarantee.
So then what would you advise this board as to the next step that we should take in regards to this?
I think you would need to respond, give a written response to this for sure. But I think in your written response, you're going to have to identify what things are important to you in exchange for looking at what SAD 27 feels is not equitable. I think that's how I would advise you.
So in this letter, there's no mention of the location of the school at all. Is it there right now? They're just concerned about the RSU formation.
They mentioned something about the straw poll for the site selection on the bottom.
On the bottom.
And they already said at the board meeting that the Frenchville site selection was dead. And that was said by, that was already said 2 board meetings ago. So it's just gonna go from, they're not happy with this, so we tell them, they're not happy with this. It's becoming kind of like a marriage turmoil, to say the least. Lena and I sat on the think tank. We had one meeting, and from this letter here, it states, it almost sounds like we've had many meetings to talk about this, and we've never done anything about it.
Well, it talks about the one meeting, but then it says that we never did anything about it, but in reality, June, and then we were trying to get we're focusing on budget and budget meetings and to pass the budget. And we are only 1 week, not even into September. Yeah, the budget passed in July. August was, how do we get our kids back to school safely? So to say that we disregarded the think tank or what needed to be followed up, it's kind of hard for me to hear that because we just haven't had enough time unless we want to meet every week. I don't know if that's what we need to do, but I don't know. The thing is they say it very often that SAD 27 is a 33% vote, which is true. SAD 27 represents more than 50%, and yes, SAD 27 does, but not Fort Kent. Therefore, Fort Kent only represents, I don't know the percentage, but it's very close to Madawaska. So then if we were to decide to follow through with giving them more votes or weighted a little more, we're talking about a representative from, and again, the communities is Wallagrass, St. Francis. That makes it different than having 3 people or 2 people from Fort Kent only. If they are from Wallagrass, St. Francis, that gives us a different perspective, and that's how I feel. Every time I hear that they have more than 50% of the population, I don't see it that way. As a district, yes, but as a town, no. And I find that this conflict is more town-based than it is district-based. Seeing how the votes went for the site selection committee, or site selection poll.
I will also draw your attention to, this is the interlocal agreement. In the interlocal agreement, you have a dispute resolution section that is clearly identified of the process that any entity should take if they have an issue with the interlocal agreement. You could, in your response, urge SAD-27 to use the dispute resolution process in the ILA, which would require negotiation, mediation, and then all of those steps. That's just another option that I'm presenting to you because it does exist in current language.
We were supposed to get legal advice like 3 meetings ago. Has that been?
And I had put a feeler out, and the advice was to wait and see what this was because they wouldn't know what to work on. So my next move, Josh, is to do that, is to pass this on to legal and say, okay, what do you advise us to do now? And that was also the same sentiment that the Madawaska School Committee had as well.
I mean, they pretty much want the keys to the house and sell us an apartment, pretty much what it is. So I don't know how far we can get.
I'm just not sure that they'll be happy with the site selection to begin with, and that I'm afraid that if we give them the votes from the other communities, which is, I'm okay with that. I get that. Like Wallagrass wants their say. If they're a part of an RSU, that's how it's formed. Madawaska, St. Agatha wants their say French. So I'm okay with that. But then is that going to make it better? Is that going to move along this process? Or are we going to then be faced with, well, the site selection committee was a big bust and we need to reevaluate that. And for us to go through another site selection year process.
And they've already agreed that that site in French Road was not gonna cut it.
But it's who's they? That's what we have to keep in mind is there's probably a few that are behind this full strength, like, and then there's the others that want this, and they want the big school, they want the opportunity for their children. So.
But Wallagrass had representation on 27.
Yeah, I don't know who represents
all the
who.
other towns that make up that district all have representation on that board. So when you see 27 board, there's only 3 members for Fort Kent.
Yeah.
The others are the neighboring towns that represent. So they already have a representation from Wallagrass and the other towns, the other 5 towns, the other 4 towns.
But with the site selection, if that becomes an issue, if we go back to the straw poll, those small communities were in favor. I don't know it doesn't, I don't know if it makes a difference at the end, but it could be a lot of just going around.
Here's the other thing that I just want to remind and I will be reminding all boards about this, even, and the letter does not talk specifically to site selection, so this might be just conjecture, but because we brought up, dissatisfaction with the site selection process, there are no more grant funds to refund a site selection process. So if we were to go back at it, I believe, unless we can get a discount with our architects, I believe it would have to be funded locally for the second.
Yeah.
I think, and that's just based on how much we used of that grant money.
And what was the cost? What was the
It
cost?
was a little over $300,000 of the 700 that we have for that.
So then, what do you suggest we do? Do you suggest that we wait for, a response from our lawyers to this and then go from there, or?
I guess, what's most important to you, Paul? What do you want to ensure that you don't lose in a negotiation for what another partner sees important? They're doing a good job seeing what's important to them, but you have to use your lens to see what's important to you. And I know we'd all like to say, but we all agreed to that a year ago or 2 years ago. This is different now. I think we have to refocus on what's important. I heard a question about, Gerard said, RSU, is that just for grade levels, or is it, if pre-K to 6 is important to you?
That's important.
Make sure that that's something that's a non-negotiable.
That's definitely not negotiable.
So personally, for me, I think the RSU should be 7 to 12 only, and we be 6 to K to the local towns. I think that the site selection committee did a great job, and that should not be revisited. And to keep it fair within each community when it comes to voting. I know we have different communities, I think, different ways of fairness. But I don't think that one community should outweigh another community. Right now, there's not one community that outweighs another community. The whole 6 to 3 thing, it just so happens that Madawaska and French and 33 were on the same page. That might not always be. French 33 might stand out one day and not agree with Madawaska and 27. But I don't think that 27 should call the shots for Madawaska and not or Frenchville or vice versa. I think it should be fair across the board. And that's what we need to work on, try to find different avenues to get to that.
And that's what the interlocal agreement states. So, they agreed to it at that time. And they only started having problems with it after the site selection committee reached a decision.
So let me ask you this question, and it's partly because of what Elena said a while ago. If we know that we have to, if we get to this RSU formation, we know that we're gonna have to have discussions about the board membership and how that's all factored in. Do you want that work to also be what the Valley Unified board membership is? So we'll work towards new membership of Valley Unified, and it shall shadow what the RSU board, what we create in the RSU formation. And that way it's clearly identified that it's representative and it's based on communities, not districts. And it shows that you're making an effort to resolve that in a way that we have to resolve anyway. We have to go the RSU route anyway. So I'm just throwing that out as a possibility. And maybe Valley Unified doesn't vote on any decisions for a while we're working on that language. I'm concerned that the governor is going to read this email that I sent her this morning and look at a pot of $100 million and go, we can put this somewhere else. And I want to have an answer soon that says, this is what we're doing.
Experimenting with the RSU one person, one vote model there's a lot of advantages to that. I want to give you a sense of how the RSU will function, because the Education Service Center becomes kind of a model, and people will become accustomed to that. And right now it is set up so that you're looking at, RSU for middle school through high school. So you'll get a sense of how those, that dialogue goes. I think there's a lot of advantages to doing that. Let alone the fact that I think it's going to move this project forward and move this whole collaboration forward.
You guys know fully that Frenchville and St. Agatha don't always see eye to eye on, it's the same with every community. You look at what's important to your community. So having representation around that table, yeah, you might have more SAD communities around the table, but Wallagrass doesn't always agree with Fort Kent, and St. Francis doesn't always agree with, St. John. So those reps are representing their community, not their school district, not the school board.
Takes the mystery of out of how an RSU will work. I think if you go in that direction now.
So what do you need from us, Ben?
If you want me to give these kind of thoughts to our school attorney, for them to start drafting language around that. I'll also ask them if they would recommend we request the dispute resolution direction. I don't know that will get us anywhere fast. I think I always believe in the spirit of collaboration. So right now you have a request from a partner. I think the sooner that we acknowledge that request and then give our own requests and what we're bringing to the table, I think that's probably the best way to move forward.
I just want to reiterate, make sure I got the main points. RSU should be grades 7 through 12. Pre-K to 6 remains in the local SAU. Site selection is non-negotiable. Don't repeat the process. Fairness is important.
And community representation, not district representation.
Okay, so fairness was important with community representation. Okay, thank you.
So then, do you need us to vote on this?
I don't think I do. It's just,
By consensus, we agree? Yeah. Is that all right with everyone here before?
Sounds good, buddy.
we could always do it a different way and just like draw straws and whoever pulls the short straw gets. I'm looking for easy.
So then, do you have anything else for us?
I don't have anything, and I thank you so much for your time and dedication. I know it's hard to keep getting to these meetings. I'm hoping that we don't have to have another one. Not that I don't want to see you all, but we need time to just let school happen. I'm very excited for our elementary to start this week. We worked with the high school leadership team today. We had our first meeting. This stuff is tough, and we're definitely going to have to really work hard to make sure that our teachers feel supported, and we're going to work really, really hard to that end. So thank you as the board who makes these big decisions.
I do have a question about, sorry, it just came to me as you were talking, about the individual that tested positive in, I believe it was it Madawaska community?
Yeah.
Within was it someone that is in the school system? You can't say?
It was a school employee.
Because I saw the letter circulating on Facebook, obviously, because that's where we get everything, right?
Yeah.
And okay, because I was hearing a lot of, the people are really positive actually, and people are really impressed with the way the school is handling it. So kudos to you guys for sure. The letter was amazing. But there's some parents who are just wondering, like, has this person been in the school? School starting Thursday. When can this person get back into the school? Or is it going to be 14 days and then they can go in? Or I guess I've heard a lot of.
So I'll just speak in general terms,
Sure.
not specific to this case, but generally, when somebody does test positive, the CDC initiates contact tracing, and then we do the same thing on our own level, community-based or school-based, to see what we can find out. At that point in time, while that's ongoing, the CDC will recommend to that individual to self-quarantine. and make sure that they have, they're symptom-free for at least 10 days. With this individual, that did happen. With any individual, when that happens, the CDC will issue you a letter stating that you've met the requirements of self-quarantine and you can return to work. You don't get that certificate, we don't want you back to work. The only thing that we would accept in lieu of that would be a doctor's note that would specifically outline the steps that were taken following the CDC guidelines and the doctor recommending that the person goes back to work. So we need one or the other. Getting back to, these things have happened. So the letter that I did give to the Madawaska parents did identify that individual had not set foot on
Right.
school grounds.
I did read that as well. Okay.
The best we can do. And if something were to happen in this district, student or staff, we would do the exact same thing. And any people who have been identified as being in contact with that individual would have to be contacted on an individual basis as well. We were just fortunate in this incident that we didn't have to do any of that because the employee was mindful enough to recognize symptoms and stay away from everyone for a period of time, which is exactly what you're supposed to do.
Okay. If there's nothing else to bring up, I'll need a motion to adjourn. Lawrence, a second? Second by Josh, everybody in favor of adjourning? Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Ben.
Have a good evening.